Welcome back. One way to think about this program is that it's simply training your brain. There are all sorts of areas in your brain that connect to all sorts of other areas in your brain. We call those brain networks. And some are directly wired together while others are using other mechanisms to communicate. The bottom line is there's a whole series of intricate processes going on in your head right now. One of the things that happens as you go into fundamental well-being is that old connections between networks atrophy and new connections come online. This is important for you to understand conceptually because it relates to how you should behave to really make use of the process. If you're meditating for an hour a day and going through the process of repatterning your brain by forming new circuits and atrophying old ones, what are you doing for the other 23 hours of the day? Yeah, right? Probably reinforcing the old patterns. Well, fortunately for us, our research has shown that it doesn't take much to tip the scales in the favor of your new circuits. When you find the method that works for you and the right circuits are formed, it simply doesn't take much to tip the whole system over into fundamental well-being. But depending upon how powerfully those new circuits are formed, it may or may not require some additional attention and tender, loving care on your part after the transition. Think about it in the context of something like post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. Let's say that you're in a war and you're in a vehicle that gets blown up. Many people who have that happen to them have an instant and massive rewiring of their brain networks in a very negative way. And that wiring is strong. Even though it happened in an instant, it's incredibly resilient. And it's very difficult to change or undo, even over years and decades. Well, there's a minority of people who go through that same type of experience, but instead of having it be a negative one, it winds up being very positive for them. And the rewiring that occurs for them is just as robust, but in that positive direction. Along these lines, it's possible to experience a very profound transition to fundamental well-being in a wide variety of ways. And a small minority of people that reach fundamental well-being get there in that way. Well, for those individuals, their fundamental well-being locks in very strongly, just like the state of post-traumatic stress disorder does. However, that's not the case for most people. For most people, when they transition to fundamental well-being, it's more of a gentle process, even in some cases, an incremental one. And if that's the way it goes for you, you need to keep in mind that these brain circuits are not irrevocably wired into fundamental well-being by default from that point on. Because of this, it's a good idea to make adjustments in your life to continue to reinforce the aspects of your experience that are in line with fundamental well-being and de-emphasize the aspects of your experience that are along the lines of the previous ways that you experienced the world that you took to be normal up to that point in your life. We'll talk about that more as we go along, and we have solutions, materials, even additional programs for it. So you don't have to worry. Once you transition, we're not going to abandon you. I just wanted you to think about all of this from a different perspective because it shows you that every moment really matters while you're in the program. You're constantly engaged in a dynamic process of change and reinforcement with your entire nervous system. Okay. Enough background stuff for now. Let's get more into the nuts and bolts of meditation in the next video. I'll see you there.